بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the especially merciful, we ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon our dear and beloved teacher, leader, and guide, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his pure family, his good companions, and all those who follow them in righteousness until the last day. As to what follows, inshallah, before we start talking about the fourth pillar of Iman from the Arkan of Iman, or Arkanul Iman, mixing up the English and the Arabic there together. Alhamdulillah. I wanted to mention the significance and the importance of why we're studying this, about Aqidah, or about the belief of Muslims, in spite of the different things that are happening both here and abroad. Things like with the recent election of the president and people feeling uncertain about what's happening or what's going to happen. There's even talk of things like Muslim registries where we'll have to register and sign up. The issue of racism and everybody talking about that on social media. The general upheaval here and in other places, especially Muslim countries, like the suffering that we see daily that's happening in Syria, the Muslim minority, the Rohingyas in Myanmar, what is previously known as Burma, the constant instability all over the world, all over. Afghanistan, Pakistan, just had some recent issues in Kashmir, again, in Iraq, all these different places. So why are we sitting here talking about Aqidah, or the belief of Muslims? Why would we, on a Thursday night, when there's all these bigger issues, or seemingly bigger issues, that are happening all around us, why are we sitting in here talking about the belief of Muslims, or the creed of Muslims? Rhetorical question. And this is answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a number of times in the Quran. The significance and the importance of the belief that Muslims have. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in Surah Al-Baqarah, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا وَإِنْ تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ صِبْغَةَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ صِبْغَةً وَنَحْنُ لَهُ عَابِدُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions, the exalted and sublime, that if you were to believe the way, or if they believe the way you believe, then they surely would have been guided aright. If they believe the way you believe, then they would have been guided aright. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, and if they turn away, they turn their backs away from this Aqidah. Which Aqidah? The belief in Tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the oneness in His Lordship, that He's the only one who deserves to be worshipped, that He has the most beautiful of names and the most perfect of attributes, that He is Lord of all that exists, Muslim and non, believer and non, it doesn't matter. That He's the only one that deserves to be worshipped. And that He has sent prophets to inform us about this reality. And that He has sent us books to educate us about the hereafter. This belief that there's a day of judgment and that there is accountability and that we should stay away from associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, if they turn their backs on this belief, إِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ, then they are only in opposition. فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ, and Allah will suffice you against them. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ, and He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. And so what we can take from this verse, brothers and sisters, is that it is our beliefs, that is our starting point. All of these different challenges that exist in our lives, in the community, in the greater Muslim community and in the greater community of the world and the society around us, if you want to change any of those things, you have to have the right beliefs. You have to have the right understanding. You have to have the right perspective. Only then will you be guided aright. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If they believe, if they have the right understanding about this life, if they understand their role and their role of their Creator and the relationship back between and their relationship with the prophets, that they believe correctly in them, فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا, then they will be guided aright. It's only from our beliefs that we act. It's from what we believe that we do. When you have a good foundation of beliefs and proper beliefs, then you will have proper actions. Then you'll have good actions. Actions that are beneficial both in this life and in the next. Because you could have good actions in this life, but there's no benefit in the hereafter. So you would say, for example, well, don't non-Muslims do good things and they do good actions and they do good deeds, give to the poor, help, build shelters, serve the needy? Of course they do. But that benefit is only in this life. It stops there because Allah is just and He's fair. He will compensate them. He will give them in this life. But the believer, when we have the correct belief, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us both in this life and in the hereafter. And that is why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلُحَتْ صَلُحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. The Apostle of Allah Azza wa Jal, he said that verily there's an organ or a piece of flesh that's in the body. And if that piece of flesh, that organ, that little piece of meat, if it's clean, if it's good, if it's pure, then the entire body will be good and clean and pure. وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ, and if it's corrupted, if it becomes sick, then the entire body will be sick. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. And he said, certainly it is the heart. It's the heart. And that's where our beliefs reside, brothers and sisters. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that if our beliefs in our heart, if our heart is right, if our heart is good, then our actions will be good. And it's then and only then will we be able to, as Muslims, as believers, have something to offer, not only for ourselves, but also for the society around us. Because sometimes people think, oh, Muslims, they just sit in the masjid and they just kind of concern themselves with their own their own issues and their own community, and they don't care about the society around them. That's absolutely not true. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, before Islam, he was involved in helping the society, and after Islam, it only made him engage even more. But after he received revelation, he had the proper perspective on how to deal with them. He had solutions at that point. Because why? Because now, كما قال الله سبحانه وتعالى, لا ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى. So now whenever he offered something for the society, when he told them this is wrong, shirk is wrong, he brought tawheed. Khamr is wrong, he brought something else in its place. Don't worship your idols in the Kaaba, remove them and only worship Allah. He brought alternatives and solutions. And it is only then, brothers and sisters, that we will be able to impact in our own life and the people around us. Whether it has to do with racism, whether it has to do with Islamophobia, whether it has to do with, the issues that are happening all over the Muslim world. Only when the Muslims have the correct belief will they have the correct actions and solutions to these problems. And when we don't do that, we will always be on the sideline and spectators. And either people will be doing stuff for us, or they'll be doing stuff to us, or they'll be doing stuff in our name, whether you endorse it or not. And this is why it is extremely important that Muslims have the proper belief. This is why it's important that we study the Aqidah and the belief of the Muslims. 13 years, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, before they lifted one finger in defense of Islam, before they lifted one hand, before one sword, before one horse was ridden or one camel, before anything, 13 years the Prophet ﷺ focused on Aqidah. on the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He's the only one who deserves to be worshipped. And when that had entered into the epitome of the soul of the Sahaba, after that, they were ready to do whatever it took to foster and protect Islam. If it meant they had to sacrifice, they had to give up a little bit of things, whether they had to give up khamr or they had to leave their homes behind to make hijrah, they were prepared to do it. If it meant they had to be a little uncomfortable, if they meant they had to share their house, like the Ansar did for the Muhajirun, I have to take in not only the Sahaba, his whole family, they were prepared to do that. I have to give up half of my wealth to give to them, they were prepared to do that. But what? After 13 years of focusing on the belief of the Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ molding them, their character, their understanding, their perspective, and their beliefs. This is why it is so important for us to have the proper beliefs and understanding of the religion, and that's why we are having this class. Tayyib? Inshallah. Fal-Muhim. So now, that was just my little 57 cents, inshallah, or food for thought for anybody who ever thinks to themselves, why do we have to spend time learning about Aqidah or beliefs of the Muslims and creeds? I've already been Muslim for 10 years. What more can I learn? There is so much to learn and so much more. What we're covering here is not even a drop in the ocean, not even a drop. There's an expression that they say, it's like a bahar la sahil laha. It's like an ocean that has no shore. The amount of knowledge, the amount of sophistication that Islam has. But if you want the bare minimum, alhamdulillah, that's there. But if you want more, you can go in and there is no end. And so we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He bless us with knowledge that is beneficial, and He benefit us by the knowledge that He's already given us. Innahu sami'un alim.